Okay, tape number 2. 15 minutes. Today is the 12th or 13th of September 2011. I wanted to, in this tape, go on with the people who are judging me. My children, my ex-wives, and some of my relatives. And if this sounds like boasting, then so be it. Turn it off. Turn it off. But you Mormons, you ought to put it in the genealogical library like your grandfather. Because this is the truth. Through my eyes. Through my brain. Everyone else has a different truth. I was an average student in high school. I wasn't on the varsity football team. I didn't have any sports. I ran a little bit of track, and I tried out for football and made the team, second string, third string, fifth string, I don't know. And about 5 or 6 months into that, I quit. A couple of reasons. My parents didn't show up and support me. And the coach was pretty violent. We were supposed to really hurt people. And I'm not into that. Never have been. So, went to Nordoff High School in Ojai, California, graduated, and was somewhat of a loner. I wasn't a strange loner. I started working at 15 for Mrs. Miriam of the RC Miriam Dictionary, and Mrs. Miriam was good to me. She was kind of a grandma, second mom. And I worked a lot of hours there, from 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. I took care of her husband, who had Parkinson's disease, and I fed him, I washed him, and took him in the pool, and you know, was his companion. There was 4 or 5 of us that rotated in all week. So I learned to be in compassionate work at a very young age. I certainly attribute a lot of my social work tendencies to my mother, who has always been a compassionate person, not always accepting, but at least compassionate. High school was basically, you know, a non-event for me. I went to school, I did my classes and assignments, and you know, I didn't really excel in anything, just an average person. At my senior counseling session with Mrs. I can't think of her name now. She was counseling me and said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said to her, I think I'd like to go on to college. And literally, she was probably 50, 55 years old. She almost fell off of her chair laughing. She said, David, you know, the last person that should be going to college is you. And that was a challenge for me. Let me put in, and I'm kind of, because I'm bipolar, I process many things at the same time that I'm talking. High school, I said, was uneventful, but I did meet Janet, my second wife, in high school. And I've told all of my kids this, and I'm going to be honest. You know, the rest of you, live your lives with image. I don't have any image. I was enchanted with Janet the moment I laid eyes on her. I have loved that girl from through the eternities. Now, I'm divorced now, and it's probably taken me 20 years to get over her, and I think I'm over her now. But 7th grade, she was my girlfriend. 9th grade, she was my girlfriend. And there's just a brother, sister, companion feeling that I always had, and I guess she grew into that. And we were married in the Washington, D.C. temple, eventually with the Mormon church. But be that as it may, I did know her in high school, and I was crazy about her in high school. Oh, why didn't I marry Janet? Gee, I wonder if my fanatical father, who never amounted to anything in life, and never amounted to anything in the Mormon church, but he was a fanatic cult member, said to me, you know, David, you shouldn't marry her because she's not a Mormon. It's the biggest mistake of my life, probably, right there. I should have married the girl fresh out of high school and then going into BYU. But I didn't, because of my father's advice, which there's been other pieces of poor advice from my father. But Be that as it may, I left for BYU after graduation from Nordhoff High School. And getting into BYU was not easy. I basically barely made it with a grade point average. At BYU, I was bipolar. I guess I've always been bipolar, but some of the stressors that come out in a teenager's life really triggers those genes and those aberrations to the way we think. And I had some run-ins with BYU. I felt that some of their policies and procedures were inappropriate. And gosh, I was a Mormon and I said so. Kiss of death. Kiss of death at BYU. I had my car broken into at BYU, and the BYU security didn't protect it. They took off a carburetor and I think a manifold. How long does it take to do that? 35 minutes? Where was BYU security? So I was upset about that, and some other things that went on there. And so I painted on the side of my car, BYU security, go to hell. That's not a popular thing to do in the Mormon church. In the Mormon church, you'll learn in the temple, you just bow your head and say yes. It's basically bend over and kiss your ass goodbye. Your family, your assets, your life, your underwear, everything from that point forward, you bow your head and say yes. Well, I wasn't that kind of a person, and BYU found out about that, and of course the Mormon church, the cult, always tries to make you afraid, always intimidates you, always makes you fearful. You're going to lose your family, you're going to lose your life, your eternal salvation, your temple marriage, your baptism, geez, all these invisible things they're threatening to take away from you. So they called me in, and they weren't pleased. And I wasn't either. I wasn't either. And they said I needed to take a psychological test. Well, I'm not sure they're the first person that ever believed that. But that's the first time that I took a psychological test. I think I took the MMPI. And it had questions on it like, do you want to have sex with your mother? And how often do you masturbate? Good Lord, it had all kinds of, in those days, in whatever it was, 69, 70. I think the MMPI has changed a lot since then. But be that as it may, I had a multiple choice questionnaire. And one of the areas was does not apply. Well, the 500 questions that they made me sit in a room by myself and answer, I put does not apply, and I turned it in to the BYU testing department, and I had to wait 2 or 3 days for it to go through their testing system, and then they called me back in the office. And you know what? They weren't very happy. And I'm going to keep my language pretty much politically correct on these tapes, because I could have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, looking at them. Probably not, but maybe. So they weren't happy, and you know what? Neither was I. And so BYU and me clashed 2 or 3 major times. They threatened to kick me out. I said, where's the door? And basically they said, well, if you write a paper for us to help us reform our court system here, if it's good enough, we'll let you stay. Well, the court system sucked. It was typical Mormon stuff that you're guilty until proven innocent. You paid your fines before you saw a judge, and it was totally against the U.S. Constitution. But so is polygamy, and so is racial, blacks having the priesthood. That's all against the Constitution, and the Mormon Church only screams Constitution when they're not being raided by Johnson's army and buses of blacks coming to BYU in the early 60s, late 60s, wanting civil rights. That's the only time the Mormon Church yells Constitution. They don't follow the Constitution. They're a theocracy. So anyway, I wrote the court paper for BYU. It was accepted, and their court system did change. Whether I helped change that or not, I don't know. And you know what? I don't care. I graduated BYU in 1972 with a degree in social work. and a minor in child development and family relations. And I then went into social work areas. I moved into the Massachusetts area, and I became an expert. There's no other word for it, an expert on residential care for emotionally disturbed children. I was hired by many famous institutions. One was Colburn Schools, one was Eagleton School, one was High Point School, all three different corporations, all wanting me to come in and fix the mess that somebody else has made. I worked my way from a guidance counselor into finally being the director of Pittsfield, High Point, and the assistant director of Eagleton, and the chief guidance counselor and behavior modification expert at Colburn Schools. And at Colburn Schools, I developed original research on emotional feelings, extrasensory perception of emotionally disturbed children. I had the theory that because they were emotionally disturbed, that their sensory systems went beyond the five senses and moved into emotional areas that they could feel the emotions of other human beings. I proved that with the original research that I did, and it was approved by J.B. Rhine of Duke University. Asked for a confirmation study, which I performed, and came up with the identical results. So I've done original research, and I have had famous people. J.B. Rhine is the father of parapsychology. So those of you that are judging me and saying, gee, he doesn't know anything, and he's this and he's that, I am this, and I am that. I am multidimensional, being bipolar, and my mind races with hundreds of thoughts all the time. The only time it doesn't race is when I sleep. So it's been about 15 minutes on this particular tape. This is tape 2, and I'm going to take a break again and come back and do my Facebook and my space. It's not your Facebook, it's not your face or your tube, it's my tube. So let me take a break, I'll be back, and I'll probably do tape number 3. Thanks, bye.